I raised him from 11 years old, taught him to drive, paid for his college. Then he sat at my kitchen table and threatened me. "Sign this, or you'll regret it," he said. My wife stood silent. I signed the deed to my house and walked out. That was my first mistake. My second was thinking they'd gotten away with it. My name is Warren Ellis. I'm 60 years old, and I've spent 35 years as a master mechanic at Henderson Ford in Flint, Michigan. My hands are scarred from torn knuckles and chemical burns. My back aches when it rains. I own a 3-bedroom ranch on Carpenter Road that I bought in 1989 with insurance money after my first wife, Rebecca, died in a car accident. That house, that piece of ground, that mortgage I paid off in 2003, it was supposed to be mine. It was the one thing I built that nobody could take away. Then Cody pushed a paper across my kitchen table and told me to sign it. "This is just paperwork, Warren," he said. Cody, my stepson, financial planner at Meridian Wealth Management. He wore a gray suit that probably cost more than my monthly truck payment. "Mom, I talked it over. You're getting older. This simplifies everything." I picked up the document. Quitclaim deed. My name, Carol's name, the address. My house. Simplifies what? I asked. Carol stood by the sink, arms folded. She didn't look at me. "It's for estate planning, Warren. Cody knows what he's doing. He does this for clients all the time." "I'm not a client," I replied. "I'm your husband." Cody leaned back in his chair. "Look, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. But either way, this is happening. Sign it now, or you'll regret it later." I looked at Carol, 22 years married. I'd raised her son like my own after his father bailed when the kid was 9. I'd paid for his college, co-signed his first apartment, bought him a car when he graduated. Now he sat in my kitchen, in my house, threatening me. "Carol," I said. She finally met my eyes. "Just sign it, Warren. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." After years as a father, after 2 decades of providing, protecting, sacrificing, my stepson threatened me, and my wife took his side. I felt something break inside my chest, something that had been holding me together for longer than I realized. I signed the paper. Didn't argue. Didn't yell. I just wrote my name where Cody pointed and slid it back across the table. "Smart move," Cody said, folding the document. I stood up, grabbed my jacket from the hook by the door, and walked out. Carol called after me once, but I didn't stop. I climbed into my F-150, the one with 200,000 miles and a passenger door that's stuck in the cold, and I drove. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stay in that house another minute. The streetlights blurred past. My hands were shaking on the wheel. By the time I pulled into the parking lot of a budget and off I-75, it was past midnight. The desk clerk barely looked up when I paid cash for 3 nights. The room smelled like old carpet and cleaning chemicals. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall. My phone buzzed twice with texts from Carol, but I didn't read them. I turned it face down on a nightstand and lay back. That's when it hit me. Not anger, not sadness, just a cold, clear understanding that I'd been played. Cody, the financial planner, the estate specialist, had used his professional knowledge to con his own stepfather, and Carol had let him. I closed my eyes, but sleep didn't come. Instead, I replayed every conversation from the last 6 months, looking for the moment when I should have seen this coming. When I finally drifted off around 4 in the morning, I dreamed about Rebecca, my first wife, the woman who'd never have let this happen. When I woke at dawn, my back screaming from the cheap mattress, one thought filled my head. I wasn't done yet. The diner off Dort Highway opened at 5. I was there at 5:15, sitting in a booth that smelled like bacon grease and burnt coffee. The waitress, a woman in her 60s with tired eyes and a name tag that said Deb, poured without asking. "Rough night?" she asked. "Something like that," I replied. She nodded like she'd heard it 1,000 times before and moved on to the next table. I wrapped my hands around the mug and stared out the window at the empty parking lot. My phone sat face up on the table. 7 missed calls. 12 texts. I didn't need to read them to know what they said. The eggs arrived. I ate mechanically, forcing food down because my body needed fuel even if my mind was somewhere else. When I finished, I pulled out the small notebook I kept in my truck, the one I used for tracking oil changes and tire rotations. I flipped to a clean page and started writing. November 14th, 8:47 p.m. Kitchen table. Cody presented quitclaim deed. Carol present, standing by sink. Cody's exact words, "Sign it now, or you'll regret it later. Carol's words. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. I wrote down everything I could remember. The time, the place, the words, the looks on their faces. My brother Donnie worked HVAC, been through 2 divorces, and he told me once that the difference between winning and losing came down to documentation. Write it down, he'd said. Dates, times, witnesses. Make it real on paper. When I finished, I called him. Warren. Donnie's voice was rough with sleep. It's not even 7. What's wrong? I told him. Not everything, just the skeleton of it. The deed, the threat, walking out. Donnie was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, Where are you now? Budgeting off, 75. Stay there. Don't go back to the house. Don't talk to Carol or Cody. You hear me? I hear you. I'm serious, Warren. You sign under pressure. That matters. But if you go back now, if you start apologizing or trying to smooth things over, you'll muddy the water. You need a lawyer. I don't even know where to start. I do, Donnie replied. Woman named Judith Pearson. She handled my second divorce. Tough as nails. I'll text you her number. After we hung up, I sat in the booth and watched the morning shift arrive. Construction workers in mud-caked boots. A nurse still in scrubs. A young guy with a tie already loosened at 7 in the morning. Regular people, living regular lives, unaware that someone's world had just come apart at the kitchen table. My phone buzzed. Donnie's text. Judith Pearson. Tell her I sent you. Don't wait. Another buzz. Carol. We need to talk. Come home. I deleted her message and called the number Donnie sent. A receptionist answered, professional and brisk. I explained who I was, that Donnie Ellis had referred me, that I needed to speak with Ms. Pearson as soon as possible. She has an opening at 2 this afternoon, the receptionist said. Can you make that? I'll be there. I hung up and finished my coffee. It was cold now, bitter. I paid the check, left Eb a decent tip, and walked out to my truck. The morning sun was just starting to break through the clouds, casting long shadows across the parking lot. Before I started the engine, my phone rang again. Not Carol this time. A number I didn't recognize. Local area code. I answered. Hello. Mr. Ellis? A man's voice, smooth and professional. This is Mitchell Gray. I'm calling on behalf of Mrs. Ellis regarding some recent paperwork. I was hoping we could arrange a time to discuss the details. On behalf of Mrs. Ellis. Not your wife. Not Carol. Mrs. Ellis. I've retained counsel, I said, surprised at how steady my voice sounded. Have your office contact Judith Pearson. I hung up before he could respond. My hands were shaking again, but not from fear. From something else. Something that felt almost like clarity. They'd moved fast, getting a lawyer involved within 12 hours. That told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't about estate planning. This was about taking everything I'd built, and they'd assumed I'd just let it happen. They'd assumed wrong. Judith Pearson's office sat in a converted house on Saginaw Street, the kind of place that had been a family home 50 years ago before the neighborhood turned commercial. The waiting room still had crown molding and hardwood floors that creaked when you walked. A receptionist in her 30s looked up when I entered. Mr. Ellis? That's me. Ms. Pearson will be right with you. Coffee. I shook my head and took a seat in one of the mismatched chairs. Legal magazines fanned across a coffee table. A clock on the wall ticked loud enough to count. I'd spent the morning driving around Flint, trying to organize my thoughts, trying not to think about Carol sleeping in our bed while I'd spent the night in a motel that charged by the week. A door opened. The woman who emerged was shorter than I expected, maybe 5'4", with steel gray hair pulled into a bun and reading glasses hanging from a chain around her neck. She wore a dark blue suit that had seen plenty of courtrooms. Mr. Ellis. Judith Pearson. Her handshake was firm. Come on back. Her office was organized chaos. Files stacked on every surface, a computer older than some of my tools at the dealership, and a window that looked out onto a parking lot. She gestured to a chair and sat behind her desk. Donnie speaks highly of you, she said. Told me you're a straight shooter. I appreciate that. Saves time. She opened a yellow legal pad. Tell me what happened. Start from the beginning. Don't leave anything out. I told her everything. Meeting Carol 22 years ago. Raising Cody from 11 years old. The quitclaim deed. The threat. Walking out. The call from Mitchell Gray this morning. When I finished, I slid my notebook across the desk. I wrote down what I could remember. Time's exact words. Judith read through my notes without comment. When she finished, she looked up. Did Cody give you time to review the document? To consult with anyone? No. He wanted it signed right then. And he explicitly stated there would be consequences if you refused. He said I'd regret it. Carol, back him up. Judith tapped her pen against the pad. Here's the situation, Mr. Ellis. A quick claim deed signed under duress, without adequate time for review, with explicit threats, that's potentially voidable. The key word is potentially. We'll need to establish a pattern. Was this a one-time pressure situation, or is there more? Like what? Financial irregularities. Joint accounts being drained. Credit cards in your name you didn't authorize. Assets being moved. Any of that sound familiar? I thought about our bank account. Carol handled most of the bills. I made the deposits. She wrote the checks. I don't know, I admitted. I never looked that close. You're going to look now, Judith said. I want you to pull every financial record you can access. Bank statements, credit reports, anything with your name on it. If Cody's been planning this, there will be breadcrumbs. What about the deed? Can we stop it from being recorded? Mitchell Gray called you this morning, which means they haven't recorded it yet. They're testing the water, seeing if you'll cooperate quietly. That's actually good for us. It means they're nervous. Nervous about what? About whether this will hold up if challenged. A clean transfer, done properly, nobody blinks. But one done under pressure, with threats, with a financial advisor manipulating his own stepfather. Judith smiled, but it wasn't warm. That's a different story. That's fraud. That's elder financial abuse. And if Cody's as smart as you say, he knows it. I felt something loosen in my chest. So what do? We send a letter to Mitchell Gray. Formal, professional. We note the circumstances of the signing, request documentation of the transfer, and make it clear that any attempt to record or act on that deed will be challenged aggressively. We're not accusing anyone of anything yet. We're just preserving your rights. Will that work? It'll make them pause. And while they're pausing, we dig. You give me those financial records. I want to know what Cody's really after. I nodded. How much is this going to cost? My retainer is $3,000. After that, we'll see where we are. I thought about my savings account. About the overtime I'd banked over 35 years. I can do that. Good. Judith stood and extended her hand again. One more thing, Mr. Ellis. Don't contact Carol or Cody. Not a text, not a call, nothing. Everything goes through me now. Understood. Understood. I left her office feeling something I hadn't felt since signing that paper. Not hope, exactly. More like direction. Like I'd stopped falling and found a ledge to grab onto. Mitchell Gray called again the next morning. I was sitting in the motel room, coffee from the gas station going cold on the nightstand, when my phone rang. I let it go to voicemail. 2 minutes later, Judith called. Mitchell Gray just contacted my office, she said. Very polite, very careful. He wants to arrange a meeting to discuss the deed transfer. Says there's been a misunderstanding. What kind of misunderstanding? The kind where they realized you lawyered up faster than they expected. He was nervous, Warren. I could hear it in his voice. That tells me we hit a nerve. What did you tell him? That we'd be happy to meet once we've reviewed all relevant financial documents related to the transfer. I also mentioned that any premature recording of the deed would be viewed as bad faith and challenged immediately. I smiled for the first time in 2 days. How'd he take that? About as well as you'd expect. He tried to smooth it over, talking about family harmony and avoiding unnecessary conflict. I told him family harmony should have been considered before his clients pressured you into signing legal documents at your kitchen table. What happens now? Now we wait for them to make the next move. But in the meantime, I need you to do something. Go to your bank. Pull statements from the last 5 years. Check for unusual withdrawals, transfers, anything that doesn't look right. If Carol or Cody has been moving money, I want to know about it. After we hung up, I drove to First State Bank on Bristol Road. The branch manager, a woman named Angela who'd handled my accounts for 15 years, smiled when I walked in. Warren, good to see you. What can we do for you today? I need copies of all my account statements. Joint checking, savings, everything. Going back 5 years. Her smile faded slightly. Is everything all right? Just need to review some things. Can you help me? Of course. Give me about 20 minutes. I sat in the lobby and watched people come and go. A young couple opening their first joint account. An older man depositing a check. Regular banking, regular lives. I wondered if any of them knew how fast things could fall apart. Angela returned with a thick manila envelope. Everything's in here. If you need anything else, just let me know. Thanks, Angela. I took the envelope back to the motel and spread the statements across the bed. 5 years of transactions, every deposit and withdrawal, every check and electronic transfer. It took me an hour to spot the first irregularity. A withdrawal for $8,000, 18 months ago. The memo line said home repairs. I didn't remember any repairs that cost $8,000. I kept looking. Another one. $6,000, 10 months ago. Medical expenses. I hadn't been to a doctor in 2 years, except for a physical the plant required. Then another. $12,000, 4 months ago. Investment opportunity. I added them up. $26,000. Gone from accounts I'd built over 3 decades of overtime and careful saving. Money I didn't authorize. Money I didn't even know was missing. I called Judith. Found something, I said, and told her about the withdrawals. She was quiet for a moment. That's substantial. Were these accounts joint with Carol? Yes. Then technically she had legal access. But combined with the quitclaim deed, with Cody's profession, this starts to look like a pattern. Like they've been planning this for a while. What do we do with this? We document it. We add it to the file. And when we sit down with Mitchell Gray, we make it very clear that we know exactly what's been happening. This isn't about one piece of paper anymore, Warren. This is about financial manipulation spanning more than a year. That changes everything. That afternoon, Carol texted me. The first message since I'd walked out. We need to talk. Please. I didn't respond. I'd said everything I needed to say when I signed my name on that deed. Now it was time to let the law say the rest. 3 days after finding the financial irregularities, I got a call from Judith. Her voice had an edge I hadn't heard before. Warren, I need you to come to my office. Today, if possible. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. I found something. Something big. I was there in 40 minutes. Judith had papers spread across her desk, like she'd been working through the night. She looked up when I entered, and I saw something in her expression that made my stomach tighten. Sit down, she said. I sat. I did some digging into Carol's first marriage. Public records, court filings, that sort of thing. I wanted to see if there was any history of financial disputes. She slid a document across the desk. This is the divorce decree from Carol and Cody's father, dated 1996. I picked it up. The legal language was dense, but certain phrases jumped out. Fraudulent transfer of marital assets. Concealment of joint property. Coercion and undue influence. I don't understand, I said. Carol's first husband, David Palmer, he filed these allegations during their divorce. Claimed she pressured him into signing over the house they owned jointly, then immediately filed for divorce. He fought it, but by the time the case went to court, she'd already sold the property and the money was gone. The judge ruled against him because he couldn't prove the signature was coerced. The room felt smaller. She's done this before. Not just her. Look at who represented her in that case. Judith tapped another document. Mitchell Gray. He was a junior associate back then, working for a bigger firm. But it was his first big case. Carol was his client. So they've worked together before. For almost 30 years. And here's where it gets interesting. She pulled out another file. I ran a property search on Cody. Guess what address came up as his business registration? I don't know. Your house. 2847, Carpenter Road. He registered his financial planning business there 2 years ago, which means legally, he's been establishing residency and business presence at that address. If they'd gotten away with the quitclaim deed, he could argue he had a legitimate claim to the property based on business operations. I felt sick. This was planned. Meticulously. The withdrawals, the deed, Cody's business registration, all of it. They've been setting this up for years. And if you hadn't walked out, if you hadn't hired counsel immediately, they probably would have succeeded. What do we do now? Now we go on offense. I'm filing a motion to void the deed based on fraud and duress. We're also going to request a full accounting of all marital assets, including an investigation into where those withdrawn funds went. And I'm reporting the situation to the Michigan Department of Insurance and Financial Services. Cody's a licensed financial planner. If he's using his professional knowledge to defraud family members, that's grounds for losing his license. Will that work? It'll hurt. A lot. His entire career depends on that license. Clients won't work with someone under investigation for elder financial abuse. She leaned forward. But Warren, I need to be straight with you. This is going to get ugly. Carol and Cody will fight back. They'll make accusations. They'll try to paint you as vindictive or mentally unstable. Are you prepared for that? I thought about the motel room I'd been living in for a week, about the house I bought with Rebecca's insurance money, the one Carol was trying to steal, about 35 years of honest work at the dealership, building something solid. I'm prepared, I said. That evening, Donnie called me. You need to come by the house. Not your house. My house. Why? Just come. Trust me. Donnie lived in a small bungalow on the east side of Flint. When I arrived, he was sitting on the porch with a beer and a grim expression. He handed me an envelope when I sat down. What's this? Open it. Inside was a photograph. Carol and a man I didn't recognize, sitting close together in what looked like a restaurant booth. The angle suggested it was taken from across the room, maybe with a phone. The man had his hand on Carol's arm. She was smiling. Who is he? His name's Robert Vance. Works in commercial real estate. I've seen them together twice now. Coffee shop last week. That restaurant 3 days ago. I stared at the photo. How'd you get this? I've been keeping an eye on things. After you told me what happened, I started watching the house. Saw her leave one afternoon. Followed her. Donnie took a drink. Warren, I don't think Cody's the only one planning an exit strategy. The pieces started fitting together in a way that made my chest hurt. The urgency to get the deed signed. The withdrawals over the past 2 years. Mitchell Gray on speed dial. Carol wasn't just helping her son steal my house. She was setting herself up for the next chapter of her life, one that didn't include me. How long? I asked. Don't know. Could be months, could be longer. But it's not new. They look comfortable together. I put the photo back in the envelope. Does Judith need to see this? Probably. Establishes motive. Shows this wasn't about estate planning for your benefit. This was about liquidating assets before filing for divorce. I sat there on my brother's porch as the sun went down, holding evidence of a betrayal that somehow felt worse than the deed, worse than the stolen money. At least those were about greed. This was about replacing me entirely, erasing 22 years like they'd never happened. Thanks for watching out, I said finally. Donnie shrugged. That's what brothers do. Question is, what are you going to do now? I thought about Judith's question. Was I prepared for how ugly this would get? I'm going to finish it, I said. Whatever it takes. The mediation was scheduled for Friday morning at the county courthouse. Judith had pushed for it, arguing that both parties needed to establish their positions before things escalated further. Mitchell Gray had agreed, probably hoping he could smooth everything over in person. I arrived 15 minutes early. The courthouse smelled like old wood and floor wax. Judith met me in the hallway, carrying her briefcase and wearing the same no-nonsense expression I'd come to trust. Remember what we discussed, she said. Stay calm. Don't engage directly with Carol or Cody. Let me handle the talking. Your job is to sit there and look like a man who's not going anywhere. I can do that. We entered the mediation room. Carol was already there, sitting beside Cody. She looked smaller than I remembered, or maybe I was just seeing her differently now. Cody wore a charcoal suit and an expression of practiced concern. Mitchell Gray sat at the head of the table, organizing papers. Mr. Ellis, Gray said, nodding. Ms. Pearson, thank you for coming. Let's get started, Judith replied, sitting down. I took the chair beside her. Gray cleared his throat. I think we can all agree that this situation has gotten more complicated than anyone intended. My clients are willing to discuss a reasonable resolution that addresses everyone's concerns. What kind of resolution? Judith asked. Carol spoke up, her voice soft. Warren, this doesn't have to be adversarial. We're family. We can work this out. I looked at her, but didn't respond. Judith had been clear. Don't engage. Cody leaned forward. We're prepared to void the quitclaim deed if certain conditions are met. Dad, you're not getting any younger. We just want to make sure Mom's taken care of if something happens to you. Don't call him that, Judith said flatly. Mr. Ellis isn't your father. He was your stepfather, past tense. And we're not here to negotiate based on your manufactured concerns about his health. Gray shifted uncomfortably. Perhaps we should focus on finding common ground. Common ground would have been not threatening my client in his own kitchen, Judith replied. She opened her briefcase and pulled out a folder. Since we're discussing reasonable resolutions, let's review what we've discovered. $26,000 withdrawn from joint accounts over the past 18 months, none of it authorized by Mr. Ellis. A business registration filed by Mr. Kane at Mr. Ellis's property without his knowledge. And most interesting, a pattern of similar behavior from Mrs. Ellis's previous marriage. Carol's face went pale. Cody shot a look at Mitchell Gray, who suddenly found his notes very interesting. I don't know what you're talking about, Carol said. Judith slid a document across the table. Divorce decree. Carol Ellis versus David Palmer, 1996. Allegations of fraudulent asset transfer. Sound familiar? And Mr. Gray, interesting that you represented Mrs. Ellis in that case as well. Small world. The room went silent. Mitchell Gray picked up the document, scanned it, and set it back down. That case was resolved nearly 30 years ago. Resolved because the victim couldn't prove coercion in time. But we can. We have Mr. Ellis's contemporaneous notes from the night of the signing. We have text messages. We have a clear timeline. And we have a pattern. Cody's jaw tightened. This is ridiculous. We were trying to help. Help. I spoke for the first time, unable to stay quiet any longer. You threatened me, Cody. In my own house. After everything I did for you. Warren, please, Carol started. No. I kept my eyes on Cody. I taught you to drive. I paid for your education. I co-signed your first car. I treated you like my own son. And you sat at my kitchen table and told me I'd regret it if I didn't sign away my house. Cody opened his mouth, then closed it. For the first time since this started, he looked uncertain. Judith pulled out another folder. We're also filing a complaint with the Michigan Department of Insurance and Financial Services regarding Mr. Kane's conduct. Using his position as a financial advisor to manipulate a family member into signing legal documents? That's grounds for license suspension at minimum. You can't do that, Cody said, his voice rising. We already did. They'll be contacting you within the week. Mitchell Gray held up his hands. Let's all take a breath. Clearly there have been some misunderstandings. There's been no misunderstanding, Judith interrupted. There's been attempted fraud. The question now is whether your clients want to resolve this quietly or publicly. Because if we go to court, all of this becomes public record, including Mrs. Ellis's history and Mr. Kane's professional misconduct. Carol's composure finally broke. Warren, please, don't do this. I looked at her, this woman I'd loved for 22 years, and felt nothing but tired. You did this, Carol. The day you let Cody threaten me and didn't say a word to stop it. The mediation ended 30 minutes later with no agreement. As we walked out, Judith put a hand on my arm. That went better than I expected, she said. How do you figure? They're scared. Really scared. Gray knows his clients are exposed. Give it a week. They'll come back with a better offer. What if they don't? Then we go to court, and we win. I walked out of the courthouse into the cold November air, feeling something shift inside me. Not victory. Not yet. But for the first time since signing that paper, I felt like myself again. Like a man who'd stopped taking punches and started throwing them back. Mitchell Gray called Judith on Tuesday morning. I was at the dealership, trying to focus on a transmission rebuild, when my phone rang. Warren, they want to settle, Judith said. Her voice was calm, but I could hear the satisfaction underneath. Gray just sent over a proposal. What kind of proposal? Come by the office at lunch. You need to see this in person. An hour later, I sat across from Judith while she laid out the terms. Carol and Cody would void the quitclaim deed. In exchange, I'd agree not to pursue criminal charges for the stolen money or file complaints about Cody's professional conduct. They'd also pay back $15,000 of the $26,000 they'd taken, calling it a goodwill gesture. What about the other $11,000? I asked. They're claiming those were legitimate marital expenses. Repairs, household costs, things they say benefited both of you. That's garbage. I know. But here's what matters. They're scared. This offer means they know they can't win if this goes to court. The question is, do you want to take it? I thought about it. Getting the house back free and clear. Getting 15 grand returned. Cody facing no consequences for fraud. Carol walking away like she'd done nothing wrong. No, I said. I want all of it. Every dollar. And I want Cody's license reviewed. He used his professional position to manipulate his own stepfather. That can't just disappear because it's inconvenient. Judith leaned back, studying me. That means we go to court. You understand that? It'll be public. It'll be expensive. And Carol will fight dirty. She'll make accusations about your character, your mental state, anything to muddy the water. Let her try. I've got 35 years of showing up on time and doing honest work. I've got a brother who'll testify about my character. I've got contemporaneous notes from the night they threatened me. What does she have? A good point. Judith smiled. All right. I'll tell Gray we reject the offer. We want full restitution, a formal apology, and a complaint against Cody stands. If they don't agree, we file a civil suit for fraud and elder financial abuse. How long will that take? Could be months, maybe a year. But Warren will win. I'm sure of it. That night, I got a text from Cody. The first direct contact since I walked out. We're trying to be reasonable. Don't throw away your family over money. I showed it to Judith the next morning. She read it and shook her head. That's witness tampering. He's trying to pressure you outside the legal process. Don't respond. In fact, forward it to me. It's more evidence. By Thursday, Mitchell Gray called again. This time, the offer changed. Full restitution of the $26,000. Void the deed. Carol would agree to a legal separation with a fair division of any remaining marital assets. The only condition, I wouldn't pursue the complaint against Cody's license. They're protecting him, I said when Judith relayed the terms. Of course they are. His career is worth more than the house or the money. But here's the thing. We don't need their permission to file that complaint. It's already done. The state board will investigate regardless of whether we settle. This condition is meaningless. So we take it. I think we should. You get your house, your money, and your freedom. Carol gets out of the marriage without a drawn-out divorce battle. And Cody still faces professional consequences. It's as close to a win as we're going to get without spending a year in court. I thought about the house on Carpenter Road, about sleeping in a motel for 2 weeks, about starting over at 60 years old. What about the affair? The guy Carol's seeing? We can use it as leverage in the separation agreement. Make sure she doesn't try to claim spousal support or half your pension. Want me to include it? Yeah, I want all documented. Everything she did. So there's no question about who destroyed this marriage. Judith drafted the settlement. By Friday afternoon, Mitchell Gray had signed off on behalf of Carol and Cody. The quitclaim deed was voided. The money would be returned in 30 days. Legal separation would be filed within the week. It's over, Judith said when she called with the news. You can go home, Warren. But when I drove past the house that evening, Carol's car was in the driveway. Lights on in the kitchen. For a moment, I almost kept driving. Then I remembered. It was my house. My name on the deed. My 35 years of work that paid for it. I pulled into the driveway, grabbed my duffel from the truck, and walked up to the front door. I still had my key. The lock turned smooth. Inside, Carol stood in the living room like she'd been waiting. Warren, she said. Her voice was small. I'll be staying in the guest room. I replied, walking past her. You've got 2 weeks to find somewhere else. That's what the separation agreement says. Can we talk about this? I stopped and turned. There's nothing to talk about, Carol. You made your choices. You let your son threaten me. You stole from me. You were planning to leave me anyway. So no, we're done talking. I went to the guest room and closed the door. Through the wall, I heard her crying. I felt nothing. 2 days later, Cody showed up while Carol was packing. I was in the garage, organizing tools, when I heard his voice in the kitchen. I walked in to find him standing there, hands in his pockets, looking smaller than I remembered. You cost me everything, he said. His voice shook. The state board suspended my license, pending investigation. My clients are leaving. My firm put me on administrative leave. You cost yourself everything, I replied. The minute you threatened me. I was trying to help my mother. You were trying to steal my house. There's a difference. He stared at me for a long moment. Then he turned and walked out. I never saw him again. Carol moved out on a Tuesday. Donnie helped me change the locks that afternoon. We didn't talk much, just worked side by side like we'd done 100 times before on various projects over the years. When we finished, he handed me the new keys. You good? He asked. Getting there. She took her clothes and some kitchen stuff. Left most of the furniture. Guess she figured the new guy had his own. I walked through the house after Donnie left. It felt bigger, quieter. The bedroom Carol and I had shared for 22 years looked sterile now, with half the closet empty. I moved my clothes from the guest room that evening. It felt strange sleeping in that bed alone, but not bad. Just different. The guys at the dealership noticed the change. I didn't volunteer information, but word gets around in a small shop. Jimmy, one of the younger mechanics, asked if I was doing okay. Yeah, I said, torquing down a cylinder head. Better than I was. Heard your stepson try to screw you over. He tried, but you fought back. I looked up at him. Kid was maybe 25, reminded me of Cody at that age. That's right. Didn't let him get away with it. Jimmy nodded slowly. Good. My dad went through something similar. He just took it. Signed whatever they wanted. Lost everything. I always wished he'd fought back. Sometimes fighting back is all you've got. The dealership's owner, Bill Henderson, called me into his office that Friday. He was in his 70s, planning to retire in a couple years. He'd owned the place since before I started. Warren, I heard about your situation, he said. None of my business, but I wanted you to know something. This dealership has a profit-sharing plan for senior employees. You've been here 35 years. You're vested at the maximum level. I know. It's part of my retirement. Yeah, but what you might not know is the recent valuation. Ford's been doing well. Your share of the profit pool is currently sitting at about $240,000. I sat up straighter. $240,000. Give or take. I wanted you to know in case you need it for legal fees or whatever else. You can access it early with some penalties, or you can let it ride until you retire. Your call. I thought about Cody and Carol trying to steal a $300,000 house while I had $250,000 in profit sharing they knew nothing about. The irony almost made me laugh. I'll let it ride, I said. But thanks for telling me, Bill. You're a good man, Warren. One of the best mechanics I've ever had. Whatever you went through at home, it doesn't change that. Thanksgiving came 2 weeks later. I spent it at Donnie's house with his kids. His ex-wife had them for Christmas, so he got the fall holiday. The table was loud with conversation. Kids arguing over who got the biggest piece of pie. Normal family chaos. The kind I tried to build with Carol and Cody and failed. You thinking about dating again? Donnie asked after dinner while we watched football. Maybe eventually. Not ready yet. Fair enough. Just don't let what Carol did make you bitter. There are good women out there. I know. I married one once. Rebecca. Then she died and I thought Carol could fill that space. But you can't replace people. You can only move forward. That's wise, brother. In early December, I got a letter from the Michigan Department of Insurance and Financial Services. Cody's financial planning license had been suspended for 18 months, pending completion of ethics training and restitution verification. His firm had terminated his employment. The letter noted that this was a matter of public record. I filed it away and went back to work. The house felt more like mine every day. I replaced the kitchen table where I'd signed the deed, bought a new one at a furniture outlet, put it together myself. Sat down that first night and ate dinner at it alone, and it felt right. By Christmas, I had a routine. Work, gym, home. Sometimes Donnie stopped by for a beer. Sometimes I drove out to visit Rebecca's grave and told her about everything that had happened. I didn't cry anymore. Just talked, like she could hear me. Maybe she could. On New Year's Eve, I stayed home. Watched the ball drop on TV with a glass of whiskey. When midnight hit, I raised the glass to the empty room. Here's to not getting erased, I said aloud. Here's to standing your ground. The house didn't answer, but I didn't need it to. I'd answered for myself when I walked out of that kitchen 2 months ago. When I hired Judith. When I fought back instead of letting them take everything. At 60 years old, I'd learned something crucial. The strongest thing a man can do isn't staying in a bad situation out of loyalty. It's knowing when to walk away, when to fight, and when to rebuild. I was rebuilding. One day at a time. And that was enough. Spring came to Flint with the kind of hope that only exists after a hard winter. I spent March fixing up the house, replacing things that reminded me of Carol. New curtains in the living room. Fresh paint in the bedroom. Small changes that made the space feel like mine again. Donnie stopped by one Saturday while I was working in the garage, organizing tools I hadn't touched in months. You seem different, he said, handing me a beer from the cooler he'd brought. How so? Lighter. Like you're not carrying something heavy anymore. He was right. The anger that had fueled me through the legal battle had burned itself out, leaving something clearer behind. Not forgiveness. I'd never forgive Carol or Cody for what they tried to do. But I'd stopped letting it define me. Met someone last week, I said, surprising myself by sharing it. Woman named Helen. She brings her car into the dealership. Transmission trouble. Donnie grinned. And you fixed more than her transmission. We got coffee after. She's divorced, 2 grown kids, works as a nurse at Hurley Medical. She knows about Carol and Cody. I told her straight up what happened. She didn't run. That's good, Warren. Real good. Helen and I started seeing each other regularly. Nothing rushed, nothing complicated. Just two people who'd been through difficult marriages finding comfort in honesty. She made me laugh. I made her feel safe. It was enough. The profit-sharing check from the dealership arrived in April. $243,000 after taxes. I put most of it into investments, kept some for improvements on the house. For the first time in my life, I felt financially secure in a way I'd never experienced, even after 35 years of steady work. Bill Henderson called me into his office in early May. "Warren, I'm retiring at the end of the year. I want you to consider taking over as service manager. 20% raise, full benefits, chance to run the department your way." I thought about it for exactly 5 seconds. "I'd be honored, Bill." "Good. You've earned it. Everything you went through this year, you never let affect your work. That's the kind of man I want running my service department." At 60 years old, I was getting a promotion, dating a good woman, and living in a house that was finally completely mine. The contrast to where I'd been 6 months ago was staggering. I drove past Carol's new apartment one evening, not to spy, but because it was on the way to Helen's place. She lived in a small complex on the north side, the kind of place people moved to when they were starting over with less. I didn't feel satisfaction seeing it, just a quiet recognition that choices have consequences. Cody's financial planning firm had closed. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he'd moved to Grand Rapids, working retail while his license suspension ran out. Whether he'd ever get his career back, I didn't know. Didn't much care either. The house on Carpenter Road stood solid, just like it had for the 36 years I'd owned it. Rebecca's insurance money had bought it. My work had maintained it. Carol had tried to steal it, but it remained mine. Some nights, I'd sit on the porch with a beer and watch the neighborhood settle into evening. Kids playing in yards, couples walking dogs. Normal life, continuing the way it always had, indifferent to individual struggles. I'd fought for this, for the right to sit on my own porch, in my own house, living my own life. And I'd won, not because I was smarter or stronger, but because I'd refused to disappear quietly. That mattered. Maybe it was the only thing that really did. The 1-year anniversary of signing the quitclaim deed fell on a Tuesday in November. I marked it privately, remembering the fear and confusion of that night. Then I let it go. Helen and I had been dating for 7 months. She'd met Donnie and his kids. I'd met her daughters, both nurses like their mother. We talked about moving in together eventually, but neither of us was in a hurry. We'd both learned that rushing into things led to mistakes. The service manager position at the dealership suited me. I had a small team of mechanics I trusted, systems that worked, customers who came back because they knew we'd treat them right. It was satisfying in ways the wrench work had been, but different. More about leadership than labor. Judith Pearson sent me a final accounting in December. All legal fees paid. The settlement with Carol finalized. Cody's license suspension documented. The case was closed. "You did good, Warren," she wrote in a note attached to the paperwork. "Most men in your position would have either folded immediately or gotten so angry they'd have destroyed themselves. You found the middle path. You fought smart. That's rare." I kept the note in my desk drawer, along with a notebook I'd used to document everything that first night. Reminders that standing up for yourself didn't require violence or vengeance, just clarity and persistence. Christmas that year was different. Helen and I hosted dinner at the house. Donnie and his kids, Helen's daughters and their families. Even Bill Henderson stopped by for dessert. The kitchen table I bought to replace the old one seated 10 people comfortably. The house rang with conversation and laughter. Rebecca's photo still hung in my bedroom, a reminder of the woman who'd made this house possible. I'd loved her completely. Carol had tried to erase that, to rewrite history, so my life before her didn't matter. She'd failed. On New Year's Eve, Helen and I stayed in. We cooked steaks, watched old movies, talked about the year past and the year ahead. When midnight came, she raised her glass. "To new chapters," she said. "To new chapters," I echoed. We kissed as fireworks popped somewhere in the neighborhood. The house was warm. The future was open. The past was settled. I'd started this year being threatened in my own kitchen, sleeping in motels, wondering if I'd lose everything I'd built. I ended it with a promotion, a good woman beside me, and a house that was unquestionably, legally, permanently mine. The lesson wasn't complicated. When someone tries to erase you, to take what's yours, to rewrite your life story without your permission, you have two choices. Accept it or fight back. I'd chosen to fight, Not with fists, but with documentation, lawyers, and a refusal to disappear. At 61, I was just beginning to understand what the rest of my life could look like. There would be time with Helen, time with family, time to enjoy the work I put into this house and this life. Carol and Cody had tried to steal my future. Instead, they just taught me how much I had worth protecting. For that inadvertent lesson, I was almost grateful. Almost. I looked around the living room, at Helen curled up on the couch, at the fire burning in the fireplace I'd rebuilt myself 10 years ago, at the walls that held 36 years of memories. This was mine, every inch of it, and nobody would ever take it again.